Hi guys, my name is Tito. I make videos on personal finance on my other channel. On this channel, I talk about other things, like today when I'll be reviewing the highly anticipated award-winning film currently in cinemas, Freedom Way.
When an unfavorable law is put in place in the country, it negatively affects the founders of a ride-sharing app, and corrupt law enforcement officers capitalize on the outcomes of this new law. Freedom Way is a gripping portrayal of survival and ambition and the consequences that corruption and bad leadership have on the lives of everyday people. Freedom Way won awards for Best Movie and Best Writing at the 2025 AMVCAs and the Special Jury Prize at AFRIFF in 2024. The film had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2024, where it received lots of praise. It is written and produced by Blessing Uzzi and directed by Afolabi Olalekan.
Freedom Way has finally made its way to our cinemas in July of 2025, but this film has been around for a little while. I think it was made in either 2022 or 2023. I'm tempted to say that in 2023 it screened at AFRIFF, where it got lots of praise. In 2024, it did lots of festivals, screened or showed at lots of festivals. And now, 2025, it's finally here in our cinemas. Hooray! I think it's safe to say that this is the most highly anticipated film from Nigeria this year, 2025, because I can't think of another film that we've been looking forward to or anticipating as much as this one, Freedom Way. That said, let's dive into it, beginning with the performances. Debo Adedayo, aka Mr. Macaroni, plays Abiola in this film, a family man and a commercial motorcycle rider whose life is turned upside down when he falls on the wrong side of the law. You see, in this film, the government bans commercial motorcycle riders, something that we're all very familiar with here in Nigeria. And once that happens, he has to adjust, and there are just several decisions he makes, and there are consequences to those decisions. Coming back to the performance, this is probably his best performance to date, because largely it's a very relatable character. This is a guy that's just trying to keep body and soul together and provide for his family, but yet the system just throws a spanner in the wheels of all that and just sends them, into a very tough time. And Debo's portrayal of that type of a man in that type of situation, a low-income earner and whatnot, is very believable. And I think what brings additional emotion and sentiment to the performance and to the character is the fact that Debo has been very vocal about police brutality and the heavy-handedness of law enforcement and corruption, famously during the NSAS protests in 2020. So there's that connection he has with the story and the film, and I think that connection also extends to us, the audience members. So you can't help but feel Debo's performance on different levels in this film. The actress who plays his wife in the film is Meg Otanwa. Meg plays Funke, and she's quite good. However, she doesn't get like many scenes of her own or a standout scene per se. Meg Otanwa's role in the film mainly is to support Debo's character, and this is not such a big deal if you're not a huge fan of Meg Otanwa's like I am. I'm a huge fan of hers. She's one of the best actresses we have in Nigeria, and if you've been watching her for years, you know that she's a brilliant actress, and she's good in the film. But my point is, we don't just get to see her alone in a standout scene or a couple of scenes in this film, and that kind of hurt me, right? But nonetheless, she's good. Kudos to her for playing a Yoruba woman, because Meg is not a Yoruba woman, but she plays one convincingly, very convincingly in this film, which is a testament to the brilliance and the talent that is Meg Otanwa. Femi Jacobs plays Officer Ajayi in this film, and all too familiar gun-toting character because we've all come across people like that, right? Just trigger-happy, corrupt policemen. That's the kind of person that Femi Jacobs plays in this film as Officer Ajayi. And Femi Jacobs was nominated for, I think, Best Actor at the AMVCAs this year. My point is, Femi Jacobs' performance was very good, very convincing, also because that character is very relatable. Most Nigerians have come across police officers like Officer Ajayi who are just the scum of the earth. And Femi Adebayo's character, from the moment you meet Officer Ajayi, you pretty much hate the guy, right? And he was very believable in the role. Was great acting on his account. I'm trying to keep it together because this was a very emotional film, and there are just so many things running through my mind. including some of my, interactions with the police over the years. Bimbo Akitola is in this film as Officer Kudirat, and I think she represented the good cops, right, that we have in society, because not all cops are bad. We do have good police officers, and she plays a good, somewhat superior officer in this film, and she's really good in the film. It was refreshing to see her play a woman in power and a law enforcement officer. Next, we have Jesse Suntele, who plays the character Themba, and he's a tech bro, right? Or he's a co-founder of a tech startup who is trying to get their startup off the ground, but they keep on running to issues with the government in terms of, laws and things that affect their business. Again, something that many people are very familiar with here in Nigeria, particularly entrepreneurs in the tech space. So Jesse's performance in the film is very believable, it's very relatable, and his role is, I think, very important because he represents the perspective of outsiders when it comes to Nigeria. Because we as Nigerians see Nigeria a particular way, but foreigners see it a very different way. And if Jesse's character Themba was not in this film, we would have just been seeing all these silly things that we go through, or that government and law enforcement put us through, as Nigerians. We have just been seeing it as normal. But having a character who is a foreigner in the film, he sees it from an outsider's perspective and says, this doesn't make sense. This isn't normal. How can you need a police report to take a gunshot victim to the hospital for them to admit the victim and give the victim treatment? That doesn't make sense. So his character was quite important in the film. Moving on to Ogaraya Jabel Osai, who plays Tayo. He's the other tech co-founder, and he represents the frustrated tech co-founder or entrepreneur, right, of which there are many in Nigeria who have had their business also affected by legislation or by police, because people who work in tech, many of them drive nice cars and they have their laptop with them, and sometimes they work late hours, and when they're heading home they run into policemen at checkpoints who ask them all manner of silly questions like, what's in your laptop? Open your laptop, put it on, where's the receipt for this laptop? And once they deduce that they work in tech and are probably earning well, sometimes they tend to extort and exploit them. So that character, Tayo, he also represented, people who have experienced that. And there are just several, so many Nigerians were depicted or represented in this film, which made the performances rather very relatable, very believable, and very powerful. What I liked that this film doesn't hold back. It's very bold and very accurate in its depiction of the failed system in the country, right? And they don't go all the way to the extreme, because honestly, there are some gruesome things that have happened as a result of bad leadership and corrupt law enforcement, but they get close enough. For example, there are police officers in this film, corrupt police officers, who say things like, I will just waste you. They cock their gun and they say, I'll just waste you now, and nobody will say anything. And that paints a clear enough picture. I also liked the connectedness of the characters in this film. The main characters in this film, not all of them meet each other, but there are things that happen in the film that affects each of the characters, and it just has a ripple effect. And by the end of the film, you see how things are so connected in this country, where certain things may happen in one part of the country rather, that you think may not affect you, but they actually will affect you, maybe directly or indirectly. And it may not happen immediately, but it may eventually get to you. Essentially, Nigeria happens to all of us. I also liked, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that there was a foreigner in this film, or a character that's a foreigner, because that character provides an outsider's perspective of the craziness of what's going on in our country, or what happens in our country, because lots of things don't make sense and lots of things are very backwards in this country, but because we've been in the system for so long, we're kind of blind to these things. I liked the use of symbolism in the film too. For example, and it was my friend Fisayo Fosudo who pointed this out to me. We sat beside each other in the cinema, and there was a scene where, when we're introduced to a particular character, there's a Bible, at the top of his wardrobe, symbolizing that, this character is a godly person, or a person on the straight and narrow. But once this character becomes corrupted by the system, that Bible is no longer there, and in its place, he places ill-gotten money or money got from corrupt means. And that symbolized, that this character is not the same person that we were introduced to earlier on in the film. Finally, the cinematography in the film wasn't bad at all. There are some very nice, tasteful frames in the film, which I appreciated as well. What I didn't like. It pains me to say that there are certain things about this film that I wasn't pleased with, because this film is so socially and politically relevant to Nigeria and Nigerians that I wish this film was flawless. But unfortunately, there are flaws. First of which is, I think, poor execution of certain scenes and certain subplots. For example, there's a scene in this film where there's a fire, right? And when there's a fire in a building or something, there's things that are synonymous, like crowds gathering, people running helter-skelter, smoke and all that. But maybe budgetary limitations or whatever, that scene was poorly executed, right? Or that element or subplot of the film was poorly executed. Also, I won't say character development. Let me still keep this under poor execution. Mike Afolabi is in the film. He plays a lawyer in the film. And while I understand what that character was representing, they could have delivered that character a whole lot better. They could have done better with that particular character. Secondly, I feel like there are things that were thrown into this film that did not make sense, but they were put there because they helped to move the story in the desired direction. They want the story to go in a certain direction, and for it to go in that direction, they have to put this thing in this point of the story. But this thing being there does not make sense to you, the viewer, right? Or it will make you wonder that you'll be like, hold up, why is this guy the one saddled with this responsibility? That ideally should be this other guy's responsibility. How did this happen? How did this come about? The final thing I didn't like about the film was the continuity errors, and of which a number of us in the audience noticed them. And I think that was down to maybe editing, but also, especially with one particular issue, I think it was on production, on set, or an oversight on set. Let me put it like that, because that particular issue, I don't see how it could have been solved in editing or in post-production. Also, the subtitling. We did spot a few grammatical errors with the subtitles. Who should see it? See Freedom Way if you like a socio-political drama that really shines a light on the failings of the Nigerian system. Yeah. Also, if you enjoyed Collision Course, Bonale Osinpita's film from a couple of years ago, I think you'll also enjoy this film. In conclusion, this film tackles, in a very bold way, if I may add, a subject matter that people shy away from, right? Which is our failed system in the country, corruption, and the ills of the Nigerian society. And it does so in a very uncomfortable way, but that's the intention of the filmmaker. This film is not a walk in the park. You won't be dancing on sunshine like while watching it or when leaving the cinema. It's a very intense film, but that's the intention that the filmmaker had, to reawaken us to what's going on in the country, because we tend to look away most of the time. But the moral of the story of this film is that Nigeria happens to all of us, sooner or later. So while you think certain things that happen in this country will not get to you, this film reminds us that sooner or later, one way or the other, directly or indirectly, you will be touched by the ills of the Nigerian society. Therefore, it is incumbent on us to fix things. That is what this film is about. And if you're passionate about that type of thing, then I think you should go and see this film, Freedom Way. I rate Freedom Way with 3.5 jollofs over 5. It's a powerful film, socially relevant, socially, culturally, and politically relevant to Nigeria and Nigerians. And I think you would do well to see it if you are able to stomach some of the triggering elements of this film, because this film does get quite triggering. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but Fisaya and I, while watching the film, talked about how it's unfortunate that when leaving this movie premiere that day, late at night, I think it ended around 10:30, thereabout, all of us were going to encounter police checkpoints on the way. which will be, and that made it very awkward. And I'm sure it was very awkward for everyone who did get to a police checkpoint that night, because in this film, unsavory things happen to the characters at police checkpoints. Guys, if you enjoyed this review, do me a favor and like the review by clicking on the like button just underneath the video, and subscribe to my channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button. On this channel, I don't just do movie reviews. Sometimes I do other things. To check out some of the past things I've done, you can click the card in the corner of the screen. Quick shout out to Emmanuel and Temi, who sat to my right at the premiere. They watched my reviews. I'm pretty sure they'll watch this one as well. What's up, Emmanuel and Temi? It was nice to meet you guys. Hope I bump into you guys in and around town in the near future. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you see Freedom Way, or if you've seen it already, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. Thanks once again, guys. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.